I stand here in front of you today, but 10 years ago, I never imagined that I would be, because I'd lost the ability to stand, to walk, and to move due to illness. You might have imagined that at the time, the biggest challenge that I faced was that my body was broken. But 10 years ago, the biggest challenge I faced was that my masculinity was under threat. And 10 years later, that's a societal conversation I hear often, not in my own mind, but with and by the very people that I meet. Masculinity is under threat. It's a question worth asking. Data shows that for men and boys, there has been a decline in life expectancy, life satisfaction, and educational attainment, while at the same time, there has been a rise in death from addiction and suicide, an increase in loneliness, and an increase in mental health struggles. Has masculinity become brittle and fragile? It's a question, when you explore it, we're already talking about it. There's been headlines run by the Financial Times and the Telegraph asking, is masculinity in crisis? Why is that important? It's important because every single person in this room, everyone listening, has men in their lives, men they love, men they care about, men they wish the best for. So, what are the drivers of masculinity in crisis? Is it brow-burning feminists emasculating men in their wake? 56% of UK men said in a recent Ipsos survey that women's equality had gone too far. Or is it unhealthy masculine role models showcasing behaviours seen as toxic? 75% of UK residents felt that this was an issue that needed to be urgently addressed. Or is it the very liberal left blurring the lines of masculinity in a modern and ever-changing world? Or is it the hardcore conservatives pushing for a reversion to masculinity as it once was traditionally in a dynamic future? 10 years ago, I would have thought that any of these could have been a significant threat to masculinity. Now, I step back after a journey of research, exploration, and adversity. I've realised that I believe that none of these are the biggest threat to masculinity. Because I believe that the biggest threat to masculinity is men stepping in to become allies for gender equality. And I'm not going to lie, it feels strange saying that. Because for 29 years of my life, dominance, proving people wrong, and good old-fashioned hard work served me very well. Growing up on a council estate in the north, to teenage parents, to becoming the first one in my extended family to go to university, and from building a tech business from my bedroom to operating across Europe, that version of masculinity served me well. To the outside world, I was seen as a success. But as I lay in that hospital bed, unable to do anything for myself, I had a moment. Because all of a sudden, the masculine traits that I'd valued, physicality, presence, independence, autonomy, status, gone. I learned to walk again alongside my newborn daughter. I was determined to be able to take her first steps with her. This journey connected to me, to myself, in a way I'd never felt before. I got back on my feet and took my first steps with my daughter. It's the proudest moment of my life. She's now 10. I haven't beat her at much else since. But also, as I recovered, I decided to take a different pathway. I moved from CEO to stay-at-home dad. A fellow tech founder called me a loser. Someone I know close to me said it was career suicide. Another person said, I bet you're back at work in 2 weeks. And someone I knew quite well said, what's your wife doing? But actually, I knew I was lucky, because a third of fathers in the UK don't take any paternity leave, according to research from Pregnant Then Screwed. Those 6 months became 3 years at home with my children. I can stand here and honestly say it was the most extensive leadership and development training course I have ever attended. And now, I reckon I could negotiate my way out of any hostage situation should I ever be kidnapped. I'm so much more succinct in how I communicate, and I'm so much more present and patient than I was. But it wasn't just that time at home with my children that had an impact on me. I walked into my local baby and toddler group. I was the only father there. Cue feelings of discomfort, feeling in the out group, and all of a sudden, my gender being held up in the mirror to me in a way I'd never had before. But what did that do? All of a sudden, I started to listen to the mothers and grandmothers in the room. And when I say listen, I mean listen properly. Every single woman in that group had a story. Stories of oppression, harassment, discrimination, abuse. And it started to hit me. I'd not experienced these things. I'd not seen these things. I'd not noticed these things. But the black and white world that I saw suddenly started to have specks of colour on it. I got uncomfortable because I started to see other things out in society I had not noticed before. Inequity everywhere. It made me think, what had I not seen before? But it also made me start to question, why was no one talking about this? And why wasn't anyone doing anything about it? I had no answers until I asked myself the question. That question was, Lee, what has happened to you? Because I noticed that I'd changed. I'd become kinder to myself. I felt less need to win and to be right all the time. I became more self-aware of how I navigated the world and the world around me. I became a bit more human. And I needed to understand why that had happened. And it was at that point, as I started to explore what I could do to make a difference, I came across the concept of allyship. Allyship comes from the old French word allier, which means to combine, to unite, and to bring together. And I wanted to know how I could apply this in the modern world we live in today. 5 years ago, that became my mission. In that mission, I went back to university to study the psychology of organisations and the gender dynamics within them. I spoke to 100 men and 100 women about what it was like to be benefited by allyship and the impact it had on them. I hosted roundtables bringing diverse people together to share barriers and challenges, to shine a light on blind spots. I received an academic fellowship, allowing me to collaborate with academics across the world to look at some of society's biggest challenges. And I also travelled around the UK listening to boys in schools about the difficulties they were facing and how they saw masculinity being in the future. This work was regarded and considered by the United Nations and the City of London. But that didn't matter, because this was just the start. What I found is that men who engaged in gender equality as allies fundamentally changed how they were, who they were, and how they navigated the world around us. I then got interested. Could I see this happening elsewhere? A recent Brussels Binder allyship report shows that 82% of men who engaged in gender equality became better colleagues and better leaders. And this was amplified by our research with Token Man and Partners, which showcased that 97% of men who engaged in gender equality and inclusion said that they were better leaders or better humans by stepping in. And this fascinated me because it mirrored with my own experience and showed that it wasn't just my journey, but the journey of hundreds of men, of how it had changed the way that they stepped in and treated themselves and other people. We asked these men what had it actually done for them from a qualitative perspective. And they shared many things, but the commonalities included having less ego, feeling less fearful of making mistakes, feeling less like they had to have the answer all the time, and feeling less likely to be judged by other people in a negative way. On the flip side, they also became more approachable, more connected to themselves and others, and more aware of the nuances in the world around them. But the question lies, why would men step into that unknown, scary place of advocating for people that they've not had the lived experience of? Well, again, what we found is that the drivers of men stepping in were very varied, but some of the commonalities included facing injustice, discrimination, or exclusion themselves, getting clear on the moral imperative and their unique privilege and how they could use that to make change, and also taking an active decision to develop their own leadership and ability to work with teams. Interestingly, that little bit of courage plays a part in our wider society, because more gender equal societies give men a significant set of benefits. In gender equal societies, men have higher life satisfaction, better mental and physical health, better and deeper relationships, more sleep, and more intimacy and sex with their partners. Ask any man who wouldn't want that treasure chest of benefits. But those societies also create conditions for men to be more vulnerable and open, to ask for and to receive help, to be more engaged in fatherhood and have more flexibility in their everyday lives and in their careers across every single stage. Because when men engage in gender equality as allies, it gives them a purpose, it gives them an ignition of curiosity, permission to explore and go on an adventure, just like the modern day pirates from the cartoons of our youth. But what really steps up that discussion is that engaging and becoming a male ally, it actually sets you free. Freedom from the box of manhood that keeps us trapped, helping us move from fragility to ability and move beyond those norms that keep us imprisoned. It's good for men, it's good for women, it's good for society. Now, I could say that the biggest thing that we found in our research was that it allows men to dress up as colourfully as they want and stand on stages looking like a chocolate bar. But the most powerful thing that we found is that when men engage in inclusion, they become more compassionate to themselves and more compassionate to the people around them. Compassion is contagious. And every moment that we choose compassion, we move towards a better world. Now, I reflect back to when I was younger, leading my team. I used to treat everyone the same. That was equality, right? Actually, I didn't realise that by treating everyone the same, I neglected to consider the boundaries and barriers that people faced, not realising that I was part of the problem, not part of the solution. Still reflecting on my younger self, I absolutely love to win. If you'd have talked to me about gender equality, especially because the word gender is so often equated to women, when gender means all of us, I'd have said that would mean that I was going to lose out and have to give away a piece of my pie. No one wants to lose. But actually, engaging in it and speaking to other men who have, what we've realised is that actually, by coming together with other people, we can bake a bigger pie to share. And that means we end up with more pie. And with diversity, even more flavours of pie. And who doesn't want that choice? Ultimately, I used to think I would lose. Now I realise it's one of the biggest win-wins we can experience. But to say that, it's not going to be easy. You're going to be uncomfortable. You're going to be a beginner. You are going to make mistakes. A little bit of grace and forgiveness is needed. And we know the barriers that we see every day, fear of saying and doing the wrong thing, judgment from other men, and the issues around being and having to challenge the behaviour
of others. But it's worth it because allyship is a journey, it's not a destination. Step by step, action by action, we come together to create a new paradigm for masculinity. Togetherness in a world of division, trust in a place of fear, one ready for an ever-changing dynamic world. The 3 C's of allyship: curiosity, consistency, compassion. Don't forget those on your journey. But allyship is something that benefits everyone. Everyone can be an ally. That's something I'm proud to be working on every day. Every single one of you can be an ally to someone. When we talk about masculinity being under threat, men engaging in gender equality is masculinity's biggest threat. But it is also masculinity's biggest opportunity. Thank you.